Welcome back to Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, Prowler only. Last time we took on our favorite rock duo, and this time we won't be taking on rocks themselves, but we will be taking on monsters that use different forms of rocks, I guess. One will be using rocks and the other one will be using not rocks. But I guess it could be maybe made into rocks if you consider it that way. Either way, with the rambling out of the way, the first quest we'll be taking on is the Mud Must Flow, has us hunting a Barroth in the dunes. Go ahead and take it. It is a Hyper Barroth, of course. And we have our ice weapon equipped, and I will explain this later. It is a bit weird. Either way, I've got the quest. I'll go ahead and head on out. And we spawn immediately where we want to be with Barroth over here. So you probably know Barroth has some interesting elemental hit zones. When there is mud on his body, he is weaker to water element, while when you break it off, he's weaker to fire element. And it's not just that fire is better whenever the mud is broken off. Fire only works when the mud is broken off. So until the mud gets broken off, you're losing out on elemental damage. Same with water. Once you break the mud off, it's gone. Some parts, once you break it off, it doesn't ever come back. So you're not going to get as much use out of water element, say on something like the hands, where I haven't found it, if I can speak, to actually come back for water element to be effective at all. And I think they intentionally made it that way because water element in general is stronger when you are hitting the parts that it's weak to. However, of course, doesn't really mean that much if it's only there for maybe a quarter of the fight. So I haven't done too much testing on it, but ice is a close second or third, depending on how you would consider it. For most of the body, it is only a 10 hit zone compared to the 20 and 25s of water and fire. However, on like the face and the tail, I believe it is like 20. Even on parts of the hind, like his back legs and stuff, are also like 15 or something like that, which I think is a good compromise because you're always getting some value out of it. Ideally, we have a better cutting ice weapon. Kushala one probably works fine. The Snowburn stick is nice because of the extra gauge gain. But of course, we're doing less raw damage with our Mega Boomerangs, which is not particularly great, especially when, you know, we want to be trying to gain that leverage. So if you are using, say, a water weapon, then you'll want to use the water weapon until the mud breaks off. And then you can feel a little bit more comfortable using your Mega Boomerangs. Remember, your water weapon's going to be a blunt one as well, so weaker Mega Boomerangs. You don't want to be wasting the extra damage you can be dealing on the mud with a Mega Boomerang if you are really just trying to get as much use out of water as possible. Of course, when you're hit with mud, we don't have cleansers, so we can just kind of shake and press the A button and it'll get us out of it pretty quickly. And of course, you can soothing roll as well if you really want to. He's not the most dangerous monster, and the lower you go down on the list of hypers, the less you can tell really that's different. I want to say this guy, and I don't even know if I've fought the G-Rank version in a long time, has just extra mud stuff that he can throw, and you can actually disable that if you break the crown, which is really nice. Now, he may be able to reapply it with mud. I don't think so, though. I think if you do break the crown, which you can only do with a blunt weapon, at least I believe you can only do it with a blunt weapon. Again, I'm really just going off of memory here. He never really started using his mud attacks again, which is nice. You can get behind him a lot easier if he's not chucking mud behind him or shaking it off even from the front. Now, he can do a decent amount of damage, especially with his tackles. He used to be a wall in Try, but Try's a special case where you didn't have like the extra 50 defense that they would give you in 3 Ultimate, stuff like that. And in this game, by the time you get to Barroth, he's in high rank only, so you're going to have some form of defense. But in low rank Try, I remember it was something that people talked about being pretty difficult. Of course, the hands are always the best hit zone on Barroth. If you have a cutting weapon, you probably will have a better time once again because the tail is a weak spot compared to blunt weapons where it isn't a weak spot. So that with the extra ice damage may make the tail a very tempting thing to go for. And, it's not like it's a bad thing to go for either. If you do cut it off, obviously it's going to be a little bit harder to hit, but not really that much. His tail sweeps seem to come out from his left side. So if we're going to look at him this way, he'll come from the left. So we can stay actually on the right side here and be careful from those tail sweeps. We'll get at the very least one to actually position away from. before it actually is able to hit us. There's the handbrake, which is good. Again, it happens very quickly. So even if you can reapply it, it's not, you know, the end of the world. You can get through it pretty quickly, especially if your fire weapon has high raw. Then you're just going to tear through that and start using the actual good element against the body part, which may be something of a case where you would rather use the higher raw fire weapon and the slightly less fire element, and just the fire element is a little bit of an additive once you do get the mud broken off. We do have Flash Bombay, and that's going to be very useful here because the monsters we're fighting are not the fastest, and they're not going to be jumping around too much all over the place, so we can actually fairly easily predict what they're going to do. Couple of boomerangs here. He's going to growl at me. Try to get that off. I am going to go ahead and throw this out. I tried to angle it away. I did not give myself enough time. I think it's... No, it's not fine. That's okay, though. He does back up a little bit for his tackle, but it didn't actually affect anything there. I'm going to try to get it off again. Again, it's fairly easily predictable. We're going to wait for him to tackle before we do it. And in the meantime, we can kind of just throw boomerangs at his body until it breaks the mud off. He's really enjoying this. He only did this like once or twice in the test hunt, so I'm not quite sure what his desire is here, but he is reapplying mud bit by bit. Gonna walk forward. Again, I'd like it if you could tackle me, please. There you go. Good job. Okay, he can turn it as well, so you're not completely safe. And there's the mud globs just going behind him. Again, once you break off the crown, it's a lot easier to deal with. You can actually dodge behind him here. I'm gonna go ahead and try to launch this out again. I'm so used to him not having it that I'm not playing correctly around it. You want to stay close to him. You don't want to stay, well, I say that. It's actually applying a lot closer now, so don't listen to me. I'm not very smart. But from what I remember, he was actually throwing them a lot further back, and maybe it's just positioning based. Maybe he can aim them a little bit, but I thought he couldn't. Obviously, if you stay off to the side, you're fine, but it's a lot easier to dodge into the attack and go behind him than it is to stay off to the side and worry about him curving that tackle into you if you're not too careful. I think we'll be pretty fine here to get this off, though. He's going to look this direction. Did lose Go Fight Win, but that's okay. He's fixing to be flashed. And obviously, we don't want to aim that too far away, but it's fine. Get a break on his tail, so the mud's gone. Fire would be more effective now. We're just going to get as many of these out as we can. I'm going to save this little bit of gauge I have left in case I do need to reapply piercing, which I do actually have to. And now we're going to start working on that head and trying to get the crown broken off. I'm going to dodge to the right here. And you want to be moving a little bit because, again, he can combo you pretty easily if you're not careful. The similar story of the monster not moving around as much doesn't mean he's not fast and he can't combo attacks quickly. It's just that he's not going to end up on the other side of the map like a Rathalos or something, or as an ogre, where they're like all over the place, but they're not necessarily fast. They have very long tails. These monsters here, since they are lower tiered, they obviously are designed around doing this damage, so they don't mind them being a little bit quicker on tackles and stuff like that. And that gives us less openings for Mega Boomerang. Not that there aren't any. Obviously, we could after some tackles or whatnot, as long as we position correctly after them. But it can be pretty tricky if we're not giving him the space that he deserves as a monster that's fairly quick to combo stuff. He's going to tackle here once again. Maybe too far away here, but we'll try to get this out. He's going to look at me. Launch it out. Not really dealing that much damage, but again, that's okay. We're just worried about getting something out with the Mega Boomerang because it is still dealing some decent damage. He's going to growl here. I'm going to keep trying to go for that crown and maybe see if I can eventually break it off. Get a KO finally. Still no head break though. Did get a flash on him. That's going to kind of be wasted though because of the KO. Hopefully he stands back up by the time the boomerang comes around. Again, I cannot speak for whatever reason. It's not like I haven't done anything in a week speaking wise, so that's okay. Really just trying to break it. It's not obviously a soft spot, so it does take a bit of time, especially if you're not using fire element to actually break the head, or water element, I guess, as well. Because you don't really have too many good blunt fire options. I guess Gravios is okay, but we don't even have that. We have Ignactor, which means we can't even break it off. So water element would be the go-to here if you're trying to get a quick crown break and nothing else. It's really liking to just kind of get up on my back here. Be very careful. He doesn't start anything, so it looks like he's just moving to the next area. He moves pretty quickly for what I would expect to be a monster to just kind of move around, but he can dig at the very least. I guess his face is kind of shaped like a shovel, and his hands are kind of too, so that makes some sense. Not sure how it would realistically work though, but I don't think we're asking that question in this game where cats are fighting large monsters and getting hit by the tail sweep. Try to stay away from here, but as you can see, he's doing it from his left side and not from his right. So if you're staying on the right side, obviously if he's turned around or something, he can still hit you or whatnot, but that's why you pay attention to your positioning. And it's a lot more important for ranged weapons as always, or not ranged weapons, but melee weapons as always, because we don't have to focus on it as much, and to our detriment sometimes because we're not keeping that in mind as we get close to him. Obviously with some practice I can, but it is just a Barroth. It's not like he has a deviant version or whatever. Finally get the crown broken. And that is the subquest for this quest, so if you need a specific part like a Barroth gem, I don't even know if there is a Barroth gem, but if you need it, you could probably carve the crown and try to get it. I think he probably just has like a Brute Wyvern gem or something. I don't even know if there is a Brute Wyvern gem. It may just be a Wyvern gem, but also there's crown materials. I don't think Barroth uses anything good though, so I don't know. Maybe there's like a random piece for a gunner set or what have you for spread. I have no idea. You never really see Barroth, and he's a lower tiered monster, so I guess it does make some sense. But as you can see, there's no mud on his crown, and his crown is broken, so he can't toss mud out, which is nice for us. That means we can just kind of mindlessly dodge into him and not worry about positioning at all. All right, there's an acorn. I'm just kind of getting ready to finish the fight. We're past the 15-minute mark, which test hunt did not take that long. However, I did get 2 KOs on the test hunt, which makes me think he's probably pretty weak to KO. Not that it really matters for us because we're not applying that much KO outside of our Mega Boomerangs anyways, but we're not really starving for openings either. Again, he's a fairly simple fight. It's just whether or not you get bored enough to actually lose an acorn or not. It does help when you're trying to break the crown that it does get infected with hyper. So it is, you know, obviously softer when it is infected with that. And you're also getting more gauge gain to hit him with more Mega Boomerangs and stuff. So it does make the grueling part breaking process, I guess if you consider it that, a little bit easier. I'm not sure if it makes it so you don't bounce with melee weapons. Probably just does depend on the sharpness or what have you. I'm sure purple doesn't bounce on it if it is infected with hyper, but white sharpness may be a different story, and if you're using the fabled green sharpness Elder Frost weapons or whatever, then it may not also work as well there. So I think Elder Frost actually goes into white sharpness. Either way, went ahead and finished him off. I'll go ahead and carve him up. I'll meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub. I doubt the weapon has anything of value, but we'll go ahead and look at it anyways. I'm sure it's all the way probably back down here in the blue area. Maybe not. Maybe it is orange. Took a while. All right, the Barroth Mace Cross R. It's a close range weapon, as it says, 220 melee attack with only 12 water element and negative 20% affinity with a plus defense bonus of 20. Not good and a little worrying, because if this is the best side, the worst side has much less raw, 199 boomerang raw, 2 less element at 10 water element, and still the negative 20% affinity with the defense boost of 20. You're not using this whatsoever. Blue sharpness does not help at all whatsoever. It's very bad. Kind of wish it was better, but I don't think really many weapons will be beating out the Mizutsune Parasol on the blunt side, so no use case at all here. Armor is the same story, only 136. 8 thunder resistance, but not that useful for you, so we're not making any of it. Speaking of the Mizutsune weapon, we have the Soul Sphere weapon equipped, and this will be for our next monster. Frog's Face Demon's Heart has us hunting a Hyper Tetsucabra in the Frozen Seaway. Go ahead, take the quest, and head on out. And once again, we spawn immediately with the monster. Now, an interesting note about these two monsters, and this may just kind of ring true for the lower tiered hyper monsters, is that both of these monsters have very similar health, about 13,600, which seems like a lot. However, remember, these monsters are a lot squishier than our friends in the higher ranks, and they're also less threatening. So that means in the long run, you're still dealing more damage to them because they have more openings. They aren't as hard to actually reach their hit spots, and some of their hit spots are very weak, like the tail of Tetsucabra here when it is softened. So it seems like a large amount of HP bloat, but I'm sure that's just so the monsters don't completely fold over like a table or a folding table, obviously. If you're going up against it with 4 players. Now, obviously, they're still going to be going down incredibly fast because we can take them down at a decent rate. This one didn't even take 10 minutes in the test. So as long as we're doing fine, it's okay. He obviously has larger hitboxes on his hyper attacks, and he will throw rocks around and stuff, but he's no Drill Tusk, that's for sure. So if you have practice with Drill Tusk, this guy's not going to be a problem. He does do actually quite a bit of damage with his tackles and stuff, so he's not something you can be completely brain dead against. But again, if you have practice with Drill Tusk, you're not going to have any issues here. So I wouldn't really worry about it too much. I think our main goal here is just trying to get charged up so we can do our flash bomb combo with our mega boomerangs. Hopefully with Go Fight Win, but we'll see. All right, we have Go Fight Win and a decent amount of gauge. So I'm going to try to maybe do this here. This should work unless he does a really quick tackle. Does take an acorn out. Again, he deals decent damage. So if you are not obviously positioning out of everything and you're trying to get as much damage off as possible, there is the looming danger of carding, but if you're playing as a Blade Master, you have higher defense anyways, and ranged weapons are not really having to have long commitment times, like Prowler does specifically. Now, if our friend can actually attack me here and not my Pelicos, that would be awesome, but I'm just going to go ahead and waste these in the corner. Now I'm going to throw this out, and he's going to tackle me. Okay, we're fine. I think the scariest thing you can watch out for with this monster is his little hopping combo into the tackle at the end, because you can let your guard down and think it's finished, and it's not. So just be careful about that. Everything else is just kind of make sure you don't, get too greedy with your attacks and stuff. We've already broken a Tusk. It's just fine. Just going to go ahead and throw that little hop out. And I'm not going to worry about the flash bomb combo anymore. We failed that pretty spectacularly. I mean, I could still get a couple off here, but I'd rather just save it and have a full bar gauge and be able to do it. And also refresh boomerangs if the need actually arises. And if I can actually stop getting comboed here, there's this little hop combo here. So he's going to do it a couple of times. Then when he turns around, he'll charge up and then do this little tackle. Now, sometimes it's a little bit longer to charge up and it'll be a bit stronger. Really just depends. But if it is the stronger variant, he'll be kind of pulling up the ground and stuff as he charges forward. And not just kind of a little waltz. That doesn't look as threatening. A couple of boulder toss, or just one. He's doing his little hop combo once again. Just one there. I think he will flash hyper if he does do the hop combo, because his back leg is actually infected with it. So that's probably your tell. Actually, it's his face. Never mind. But here it comes. Now this is the chance maybe for this to happen. If he turns around fast enough, that should be enough. There we go. Now he will move around a little bit more when he's flashed, so you can't be completely safe, as you see here. Sometimes he'll just turn around and run into a wall or something, which is good for you. And obviously, if you get a leg break or something with your boomerangs, then you're going to get a topple, which is really nice for you to have. Maybe you don't want it while he's flashed. That way you do get the full effectiveness of flash. Like, having it immediately after the flash ends would be nice. But you obviously can't always plan for that. Unless you're, like, counting staggers and whatnot, which is not something I'm able to do. There's a flinch. Nice. Go ahead and spin into the back leg. Keep trying to go for this break here. I'm going to go ahead and dodge to the left. Never mind. He pulls out a rock. Was expecting him to turn. And he is a bit tricky with his movement. Again, if I can liken it to Drill Tusk, it's not as bad as Drill Tusk, obviously, but Drill Tusk has those little tiny positioning hops that he has that do flinch you and deal damage, and especially in the EX version, deal a decent amount of damage for how small of an attack it is. But obviously here, it's not going to be the end of the world at all. And since we're not trying to hyper optimize it or anything, I'm not really that worried. This is a bit greedy. I do get hit by him. Not going to get the flash off. Maybe here. Watch out for this boulder. I'm going to try to dodge into it if it gets too close to me. The flash bomb was too far away. Again, you see, I'm just messing these up completely. It's a lot easier to do these if you're actually playing smart, but I'm not playing very smart at all. So Obviously, this is going to take longer than the test hunt did, unfortunately. Get a knockdown from the leg break finally, and I think this is just a G-rank Tetsucabra thing, but since his tail is softened a lot of the time when he attacks, not just even with rocks, but with other attacks, his tail actually stays softened for a very long time. So if you're using a ranged weapon, you're actually going to be piercing through a lot. If you're using, obviously, piercing shots or what have you, or, you know, piercing bow or whatever. But obviously in multiplayer, it's a lot easier to hit the tail if the monster's going for a different player. And if you're good enough, you can also just position to where you're right next to the tail. As you can see, it's just soft for a very long time. Obviously, it still hardens, but I wouldn't say it's probably a lot closer together the amount of time that it's hardened than when it's not, than it normally would be in high rank or something like that. Finally get a flash off. Takes every bit of gauge that I have, unfortunately, but at the very least we get one Mega Boomerang off. Very much a waste considering the amount that I actually wasted to get put into it. I'd rather have just used Mega Boomerangs when he was waiting in the corner, staring at a wall, as monsters do. I did say earlier that he doesn't move around as much, but sometimes he does like to move around a lot. And again, test hunts, you know, if you do a single test hunt, you may just get a weird AI pattern. And this may just be a weird AI pattern where he's like jumping around and whatnot when he normally really doesn't. So it's not always something you can guarantee. Obviously, I could be playing a lot more min-maxed and like waiting until he does something that's very predictable and, you know, waiting for the tells and whatnot. However, I'm not really too interested in min-maxing a Tetsucabra. I just don't think it's worth my energy. But either way, I'll try to finish him off here. Again, he doesn't last very long with the amount of health he has. We're probably getting very close to the 10-minute mark, so if I had to guess, he's probably pretty low. I haven't seen him limp yet, though. So maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Really just depends on how badly I've actually been doing and actually hitting him. Like so. Oh, there we go. Happened pretty quickly. He did limp away, but I was thinking that he immediately went to limping territory, and maybe he did. Not too sure though, but I've finished him off, and I'll meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub. We'll look at the probably lackluster weapon, and it may even be more lackluster than not Tetsucabra, but Barroth, because it was even weaker. There it is, the Cobra Pounder across R, grade sharpness, 219 melee attack, negative 15% affinity on the melee side. Boomerang side is the exact same. This is a very bad weapon. You are not using this. If you want to use a green sharpness weapon with handicraft or whatever, you're going to be using Elder Frost. You're not using this. This is awful. As for the armor, it's even worse. Only 126 defense with 10 fire resistance, which I'm sure you can find on other pieces of gear that have better raw defense. Either way, there we go. Not really too interesting today. Just kind of some normal hyper monsters. Nothing out of the ordinary or extraordinary in that regard. But we got them done. Either way, hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a comment below and maybe even consider subscribing. Until next time, bye.